Hey guys, this is Stefano Pertigliati. I'm an attorney in Jacksonville, Florida at Coker Law. I do primarily trucking litigation. And I want to share with you guys a very, very helpful resource that we have available to us the moment a call comes in on the trucking case for us to investigate the parties involved, specifically the motor carrier on the other side. This has been invaluable, and not just establishing liability, getting their history and their violations and what they have problems with internally, but also in showing to your client or whoever you're talking with about the case that you know where to find information, you're informed, you're prepared for that first meeting, and that you're knowledgeable when it comes to trucking cases. So specifically, it's a website that's maintained by the US DOT that provides us with the history on trucking companies. And the important part is not just being able to find that information, but also learning what to look for within the website and how to interpret that information in ways that will be helpful. Not just, like I said, meeting with the client or referral source and explain to them what's happening, but also later in developing the liability picture in the case. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here with you guys, and we're going to go to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations website. And I got a little bit ahead of myself here, so we're going to go back to the beginning. All right, so the website is safer, as you see up here highlighted, safer.fmcsa.dot.gov. Another easy way to do it is to just Google SaferSys snapshot. And that first link that shows up there is what we're looking for. If you go through the main website, now I'm on the main website, which is that web address I gave you. Down here in the center column, the top link is company snapshot. That's what you're looking for. And you can search for a company two ways, either by number or name. Now, where do you get that? If you have a crash report, and I'll pull up a crash report here. In Florida, if it's a more serious wreck, you're going to have the Florida Highway Patrol do the report. And you have a whole bunch of pages. This is a form that we're going to have all over Florida. Different states have different forms, but typically they'll have at least the owner of the company. Fortunately, here in Florida with the FHP, we have the motor carrier and the US DOT number for the motor carrier right there on the report, as you can see here. So it's not always right. Sometimes they put the name of the owner as the motor carrier. Sometimes they put the name of who they're carrying for, like whoever's on the side of the trailer, not the tractor on there. But you try the information you have. So in this case, we have H. Jones Timber LLC. I'm going to copy right out of that. And I'm going to go back to that website that we just pulled up. And I'm going to do it by name. Because a lot of times you're talking to somebody, they know perhaps what the name is, but they don't have the US DOT number, right? So you could do it both ways. So when we search for that, there it is. Now, sometimes you have a company with a more generic name, like Premier, for example. You're going to have dozens of these different companies that have Premier Transportation on their name. In fact, it stops at Premier and then D because there's so many, right? I had a company that just, a case that just came in last week that involves a Premier Transportation. So it's not even going to be on this list, right? Because it stopped at Premier and then letter D. But suppose I'm looking for Premier Aerial and Fleet Inspection, and I know that they're from Michigan. What I can do is do a Control F, a search, and put on their MI so that it highlights the different, hold on a second, the different companies that have MI either on the name or in the state. And if I keep scrolling down here, I'm going to get to Howell, Michigan, right there, and that's Premier Aerial and Fleet Inspections. Okay, so that's just a little extra help in getting the company you're looking for. All right, so back to the company that we're actually looking for in the case that we pulled up the crash report. H. Jones Timber. Click on the name, and this is the main page that pulls up. And let's go over the information you'll find here. First, something helpful. You got the actual address, physical and mailing for the company. I would send a notice of preservation or a preservation letter to both addresses right away. A certified mail receipt requested, right, so that you know they got it in both addresses and there's no getting out of it. Additionally, you get some basic information on the company coming down, how many trucks they have, how many drivers they had, how many miles they're turning per year. Now, this comes off of a form they're supposed to fill out called an NCS 150. This company hasn't turned one in since 2010. That's a different issue. We don't have to deal with it right now. But as of March 13th, 2011, we knew that they were turning about 500,000 miles a year. It's not that much, not with 8 power units and then 9 drivers, but regardless. Next information looking for is whether they're authorized for hire, exempt, private passenger, private property, and so on and so forth, because this will tell you what kind of regulations apply, especially if they're going interstate, intrastate, hazmat, or non-hazmat. That's what this HM stands for, hazardous material. Even if you're operating intra-state, meaning within a state, if you're carrying hazardous material, certain regulations will apply that do not apply when you're dealing with hazardous material. Next, you want to look at what kind of cargo they're carrying, okay? Because in Florida, for example, if you're carrying logs like it shows here, or lumber, pulp, it means that you're exempt from a whole lot of regulations because that is just the way the laws are in Florida. The same thing goes for agricultural products. Not farm supplies, but agricultural. So it just starts to give you an idea of what regulations you may be dealing with this company, what kind of operation they have. Next, under the inspection and crashes in the U.S., for the last 24 months, ending on September 17th, 2018, and we're recording this on the 18th of September, so this is pretty recent. We know that they had 63 different inspections of drivers. Of those 63, it also involved inspections. 20 of them were inspections of the vehicle, all right? And out of those 20 inspections, 2 of them produced violations that put the trucks out of service. What does that mean? It means that the violations were so bad, they had to take the truck off the road and they could not start driving it again unless it got fixed or it got towed away. That's 10% of the 20 inspections that produced out of service violations. That number right below it is a national average for that kind of operation. So you have a comparison right there as to how they're doing if we put them up next to similar companies in the industry. So comparatively speaking, they're not doing that bad over the last 24 months. All right. We know they had 3 crashes. 2 of them involved the truck having to be towed away, and 1 of them involved injury. And I'm assuming this is the one where my client was involved. But we don't know that because they don't all get reported. Then this is the same thing, but for Canada, because Canada keeps track of this stuff. And typically won't find much. But then you have the safety rating. Now, because this is a Florida, intrastate only, non-hazardous material, they're not getting reviewed a whole lot. They're not getting a whole lot of inspections and supervision from the US DOT or the FMCSA or the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So there's no rating, right? No one has said they have a satisfactory safety rating. Most instances, you'll find that a company has a satisfactory. It doesn't mean that they're a good company, all right? It doesn't mean that they're pristine safety record. To the contrary, sometimes you see companies with out of service violations in most of these categories over and above the national average, and somehow they're still satisfactory. That's because very minimum standards are being met, but not safety or definitely not overall industry standards for safety are being met. All right, so that's the basic first page that we're going to have by just running the search. Here's where it starts to get better. I'm going to press Control key and hit SMS result, and then press Control again and hit licensing and insurance. And we're going to go licensing and insurance first. And there we have a little page that asks you to confirm some information and that you're not a robot. I suspect we're not going to get much here because they're not a motor carrier. All right. However, if we take that out and we do Ryder Integrated Logistics, I'm not a robot. Here's a car, here's a car, here's a car. Here's what you would find. An initial page saying they do have some records for this company, and you could get it either as HTML or a report. And I'm going to do a report just because the presentation is a little bit better. And it's already in PDF for you, save it. Again, some address information for the company, and then it gives you the insurance information for the company. Not all of it, just a basic disclosure of initial insurance that they have. And in this case, it's just $1 million. I could tell you right now from litigating with Ryder, they have a whole lot more than that. Just their initial disclosure showed me that they had $7 million. I also believe there's more than $7 million. So we're not done getting down to the bottom of that. But in this page, what you'll have is, in addition to the insurance, toward the bottom, you have their authority history. And in some instances, you see that the motor carrier, since your crash, has lost operating authority. So authority type, motor carrier. Okay, very good. Granted, 94. They got broker authority in 87, and so on and so forth. This is an old company. They've been around a long time. But I don't see any negative actions regarding their authority. But that's something to look for. Sometimes you see where it's been denied or revoked. And I had one where it was revoked a few months before the crash. So that doesn't look bad on them. They were operating without authority. But anyways, this is the licensing and insurance page that's available on this link right here. All right. The other link, SMS result, is where the real goods are. And this is the page that opened up. And what you have is some more information about the company. And you can click on all these different tabs, or in this, they look like buttons, but they'll open up different pages within that report that if you expand, it'll give you violation summaries, inspection histories, and how they're rated. Crash indicator, how many crashes they had. November 2017, they had one. All right, so that's not the one that I have a case related to, because mine was in January of 2017. Hours of service compliance, specifically to that issue. Now, because they're intrastate and they're carrying agricultural products, in my case, they don't have to comply with a whole lot of hours of service regulations. But anyways, here's what I'm really getting at. This button right here, downloads. If you click on that, it asks you, what do you want to focus your download on? Unsafe driving, crashes, hours of service, and you want all of them, all right? All. And you want it as an Excel spreadsheet. That's the easiest way to mess with or deal with that information. Hit download, and you're going to get this funky number, title, name to the document. Just save it wherever you want it saved. And then you go ahead and open it. And I'm now going to share that document with you. Here we go. All right, so this is what I just downloaded off that website. my Excel makes me want to hit this enable editing, just so I can mess with the document. And these are the tabs that have been provided, and they're down here on the bottom, 1 through 5. Under violation summary, you got for each type of these different violations, how many they've had, how many they had that were out of service, and how the government weighs the severity of those violations. All right. And for each one, whether it was part of a different charge. Very good. Now, what does that mean? It means that that this company that only has a few tractor trailers had, in those 24 months, 36 different violations. How do I know that? If I just highlight those numbers and I click auto sum, it'll tell me, it'll add it up for me. Or here at the bottom of the screen, you have the sum right there. How many of them were out of service? Same thing. Highlight it, auto sum. 3 were out of service violations. 1, 2, 3. Out of 20 inspections, they had 2 inspections without a service violation, because we know that from the prior screen, but there were 3 violations that put them out of service. All right. That's just a summary of the violations. If you go to the actual inspections, it'll tell you every time that they had some sort of inspection, what the inspection level was, whether they had any violations of the basic measuring categories. And what's that? Those are the categories that we looked at earlier, whether it's vehicle maintenance, out of service, unsafe driving, right? And in this case, they're mostly for vehicle maintenance and then safe driving. Very good. Then what the actual broad description of the violation was. So if it's blank, it means that there's no violation. If there's something there, it means that there was a violation, right? What actual regulation was violated or cited as being violated, and in the description of it. So for example, inoperable required lamp, or not equipped with ABS despite the tractor being from after a certain date. No reflective material affixed to the trailer, and whether it was out of service. Then the weight of it and some additional information that's also helpful, because it'll tell you what tractor and trailer went through that inspection. So let's say that I know, and I'm just going to pick a random one here, from the crash report. Actually, let's do it with the case that I was talking to you about earlier, this actual case. Let's go back to the crash report, okay? And pull up the crash report and look up the VIN number. So this VIN number here is 5KKHALCK8APAP7580. I'm going to copy that. Why? Because I can look at all these different inspections and violations to see if any of them match with the VIN number for the tractor that was involved in my crash. Because a lot of times, and this is a little extra information here, but it's very common for truck drivers to just have one truck that they operate, that they're familiar with, that they know what they look like, the inspections just work a little bit better, or sometimes they own the truck, right, and they lease on to a company. So it's not a surefire way to know if this truck driver has a history of violations, but you know that his truck may have a history of violations, and you may be able to link them two together, right? Because typically the truck driver drives the same truck. All right, so let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to delete this top line, and you'll see why. I'm going to delete this line number 1, delete. And I'm going to highlight all these columns to the end. And I'm going to turn it into a table. See, format as a table. Boom. All these columns, yep, okay. I'm going to highlight that again and just make the font white. so I know what it says. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over to the truck VIN number, and I'm going to search for the VIN number for the truck that was involved in the crash. And that was 5KK HAL CK 8 AP 7580. And what do you know? When I hit enter, there are a whole bunch of them. There's several of them. I'm going to go back here to figure out the exact date. And here we have it. August, April, March, May, and April of 17. So we know that he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inspections in the last 2 years. But in this case, in the last 2 years, none of them had a violation. This is now. This is right now. The last 24 months. Let's see if they had any crashes. They had 3 crashes. All right. None of these involve my VIN number. Okay, so he hasn't been in a crash. But let me pull up the violations for my crash that I pulled up earlier in the case when I first got the case. So what am I looking for? I'm looking now for violations with this company that involves some sort of conspicuity issues, right? So lamps, reflective tapes, lighting devices, and that sort of thing. And look at all of them. Look at all these. All of these highlighted are violations that have something to do with either conspicuity from a retroreflective sheeting or a lamp, which is what we then argued was the problem with the case, because he had these logs hanging over the back of the trailer that covered the lights, didn't have its own light flashing amber on the logs, and on top of that, they didn't have the sheeting, the reflective tape on it. And I can show that to you here real quick. Just a moment. Depot exhibit. See, this is how we found the trailer. Well, this is not how we found it. Actually, when we found it, they had put a whole bunch of new tape on it. But this is what it was. It's not what it's supposed to be. All these lights are brand new. They just put it after the crash, despite our request that everything be preserved. This is all the new wiring they had on the back. See, these are brand new lights. Clearly not what was on there on the day of the crash. So that was the issue in the case, and having these records of violations available to me when I took their deposition was very helpful. It's a case where the moment we got done, in fact, right after walking out of the deposition of the safety director, or really the owner of the company, and going over all these violations, the lawyer came up and said, we're tendering the limits, even though they had disputed liability 100% because our lady ran into the back of it. So there you have it. This is very helpful information where you can, especially when you can relate the violations that they're currently having to the issues in your case, right? Like what I have highlighted here. Another thing to look out for, so you see that some of these I highlight in yellow, some of these I highlight in this pinkish color. I don't highlight it here. Why is that? Because I wanted to be specific about the notice they had of conspicuous issues with their truck and trailers, but more specifically trailers, right? My lady didn't see the trailer. She ran into the trailer. The tractor in front of it was blocked by the load anyway. So here you have what unit the violation was found on, whether it's 1, the tractor, 2, the trailer, or D, the driver. So I'm only highlighting those that had something to do with the trailer, which is what we're dealing with in this case. And then they can't say that I'm being, I'm overgeneralizing or or painting with broad strokes. No, I'm pinpointing this to prior issues with the actual trailers that you've had for a long time. Over the last 2 years, they had, let's see here. Let's just do 2. And now we can filter this just to inoperable lamps, inoperable tail lamps, inoperable turn signal, no, not lamps, reflective sheeting, lighting devices. I'm not going to do side because you rear-ended it, right? I'm not going to do the side, but I may do the back light. And what do we have? There you got about 39 violations in just 2 years of lighting or conspicuous issues just on the trailer. So very damning information that made a huge difference in this case. It took them from completely denying liability to tendering their full limits right there, right after the deposition, or at least the indication that they would, and they did a couple weeks later. I'm not going to save that, and we're back. All right, guys, so I hope that's been helpful, not just on how to obtain the information, but then how to examine the information for relevant relevant data that you can use in your case. The beauty of it is that you can get it right away. Remember that they only keep 24 months of information, so it's a rolling 24 months. You want to get this downloaded as soon as you can, and then keep downloading, right? Because sometimes they're a month or 2 behind, and you want to get the data leading up to the date of the crash, and some post-crash information to see if maybe they're doing a little bit better or not. If you have a punitive damages issue, knowing that they're still violating these regulations, these safety managers out there, could be relevant to your case. So a lot better than relying on a FOIA request to the USDOT that can take 3 to 6 months just to get a response from them. So I hope it's been helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I have a very easy to remember websites, truck.law, truck.law. And you have my phone number, email, all that stuff on there available. And I'll put something here on the screen as well so you have it. All right, guys, keep at it. And if I can help, let me know.